Everyone, in this video we're going to take a look at this 2022 Acura MDX. The MDX gets a full redesign for this coming model year. This is the fourth generation of the MDX. In my eyes, the MDX has always been a familiar, relatively conservative mid-size luxury SUV. It offers 3 rows of seats. I've liked this vehicle over the course of this week. It's got a pretty strong powertrain, even though it's not too remarkable on paper. And what this redesign does, in my eyes, is it modernizes the MDX. It rectifies some of the flaws of the previous generation MDX, but it doesn't really push the envelope too much, at least not in this more mainstream form. There will be a Type-S version of this vehicle coming out this summer, which should be pretty interesting, honestly. That'll have more power, a little bit more of a performance lean, obviously, and yeah, that makes things interesting. This one here, though, is the more mainstream MDX. It's a pretty competent mid-size family luxury SUV, so let's take a closer look at it and then take it for a drive. So this is an A-spec trim, which means it has more aggressive styling outside and inside. You can see black features like the grille surround, black mirror caps, darkened wheels. These are 20-inch wheels. Here's an A-spec badge on the fender there. Moving down the side, you can see no chrome. Everything is black. If you're into that, cool. I think the design of this new MDX is pretty good. It's relatively cohesive. Another A-spec badge on the tailgate. There's your MDX badge, and then the SHAWD for super handling all-wheel drive. Power tailgate, as you should expect from any luxury family crossover. Cargo area is pretty functional as far as these vehicles go. So room for 2 up front, obviously, 3 across the middle, and then 2 in back here. So for a total seating capacity of 7. Interesting things in this cargo area. You've got a 12-volt power outlet, little cubby here. Nothing over there. Looks like this thing can fit a cargo cover, although I don't see where one would attach. I'm wondering if these little plates have something to do with that, but I imagine you can fit a cargo cover. I just can't tell where. Something else interesting, this little flip out hook here says max 3 kg, 3 kilograms. This vehicle is designed in Southern California and built in Ohio. I don't know where the metric system would come into play there. I'm wondering if this is some universally used Honda part that for other markets has kg on it, but yeah, if anyone can come up with any other explanations, I'm all ears. The third row seats are really easy to put in place. You just grab this handle, flip it back, put the headrest in place. The pivot point is really nice. It's really easy to just reach in here and pull. Comes up pretty much effortlessly. This is the space that you have with the third row in place. This little piece right here is interesting. So you can see carpeted on this side, and then flip it out, turn it around, and there's a plastic surface on the reverse. So it's plastic, it's not rubberized. It would be, I think, a little more functional if it were rubberized, but still, if you're gonna have dirty things back here, you can have the plastic side facing out and just put them on there and then wipe it down when you're done. Put it back to the carpeted side. And I'm doing this all with one hand, which I'm somewhat proud of. Yeah, pretty lightweight, pretty easy to use. And then to put these third row seats down, it's the same thing. So grab the handle, I'm gonna use my elbow. That one goes down. They even go down nicely. And there you go. Yeah, some of the best third row seat operation that I've ever experienced. It's also nice that they don't try to integrate some clunky electronic system that makes you wait for the seats to come up. Great execution. Here's a look at the key. It's a pretty normal looking key, although it is an asymmetrical design. It says Acura down the side there, Acura logo on the back. Lock, unlock, and then press and hold for the power tailgate and a panic button. Nothing too new here. Lots of really great chimes and animations out of these modern Acura vehicles. Here's the window sticker, so you can see this is a 2022 MDX, super handling all-wheel drive A-spec. So the way the MDX trim and packaging goes, you've got the base MDX, then there's a technology package that you can option. Then there are the A-Spec and the advanced packages. You can get either or. So the A-Spec includes, and there's a lot of overlap between the two packages. So the A-Spec comes with a lot of the things you get on the advanced package, but the A-Spec is the sportier of the two. I mean, this, you can tell this one has a red interior. Come on. It's the sportier of the two, whereas the advanced package is the more luxurious option. The A-Spec package costs $3,500 and the advanced package costs a little bit over $7,000. So you do get a little more with the advanced package, but if you want the exterior, you got to go A-Spec. If you want the utmost in luxury, at least when it comes to the MDX, the advanced package will be your move. Anyway, though, as equipped, this A-Spec package MDX comes in at $58,625. You can see fuel economy is rated at 19 city, 25 highway, 21 combined. Under the hood is Honda's 3.5-liter V6. In this application, it makes 290 horsepower and I think 267 pounds-feet of torque. So it's not a really torque-rich motor. That's typical for a naturally aspirated V6 like this. But I do really, really like the powertrain, even though it's completely unremarkable on paper. Go ahead and turn it on. So what I like most about these modern Acuras is that everything feels really modern. There are very few elements to this interior that feel old. The colors, the surfaces, you can tell someone took real care in choosing the different materials for this interior. So this is a somewhat soft touch and a plastic. There's a brushed aluminum finish here with a pattern cut into it. Red leather on the doors with contrast stitching. This thing has a pretty high-end sound system. It says ELS Studio 3D right there. 16 speaker, it sounds really good. Switchgear all feels pretty modern. It doesn't feel like much was pulled over from Honda, which is nice to see. Honda vehicles in general are great, but if you're buying an Acura, you don't want to look down and see Honda switchgear, and this doesn't really feel like Honda switchgear, so that's good. Some buttons over here to the left of the steering column. Here's your electronic parking brake. Steering wheel itself is pretty nice. The buttons are maybe a little bit small here, but for the most part, the wheel is thick. It's got little thumb slots here, which is really nice, and it even has somewhat of a flat bottom. There's also a hole right here. In previous iterations of the MDX, there wasn't this hole, so it just, the steering wheel just feels more finished. It feels more purposeful. I like it a lot. Paddle shifters here for the 10-speed automatic. They're pretty much buttons. Over here on the console, you've got Honda's push-button gear selector. So we're in park now. Reverse, foot's on the brake. Pull back on this thing. Drive, press the circle, and then for neutral, you press the N button. Go back into park. The most prominent part of this dashboard is probably this circular knob right here, and all it does is cycle through your drive modes. So you've got normal, comfort, snow, and sport. And something I noticed when you go beyond the options, like if I try to go down, you hear that? That's the sound from the rear cross traffic detection. They've repurposed it to tell you that you're at the end of your options for the different drive modes. It's funny. Anyway, other parts of this dashboard, again, pretty modern. This piano black here, I mean, it's really easy to put fingerprints on it. Oh well, we can live with that. Every review I've seen for the MDX has shown off this thing. Doesn't really seem necessary. All it includes is a USB-A port and a USB-C port. This is actually the only USB-C port in this entire vehicle. All the other ports, and there are a handful of them back there, all the other ports are USB-A. That's kind of a bummer. I think it's time to just go full USB-C, especially in a vehicle that's entirely new for 2022. Elephant in the room, this infotainment system. I did the math. I've now used this infotainment system for a total of 22 days. I had an RDX loaner a couple years ago. I had a TLX loaner earlier this year, and now I've had this MDX. And I also spent a day at an event driving an RDX. So that's 22 days of use with this system. And while I still wish it was a touchscreen, I will admit that it does become easier to use the more you use it. So the way this touchpad works is it's relative, which is new. Most touchpads function kind of like the touchpad on a computer. But in this case, if you want the option to the top left, you touch the pad to the top left. So there we go, top left. If I want the option to the top right, I go top right, bottom left, bottom left, bottom right, bottom right. And then middle stuff is all fairly intuitive as well. And then this one is controlled via this little guy on this side here. So maybe not entirely necessary, but it does allow you to show two different things on the screen at once. It just would still make more sense if it were a touchscreen. I think it's really kind of insane for an infotainment system in a modern vehicle to not also be a touchscreen. But not terrible, not nearly as awful as Lexus, but again, it would be a lot more passable if you could just touch it as well. I think that about covers the front seating area altogether. Again, this is an A-spec trim, so you get these sportier seats with this black suede insert. The red leather feels pretty nice. It's perforated. Heated and ventilated seats, of course. Yeah, everything in here feels really, really modern. And I think more than anything, that's what will draw people in to this new crop of Acuras. Let's check out the second row. Okay, in the second row of the new MDX, and one of the first things I notice is that the floor back here is completely flat, which is nice, allows you to sprawl out. There isn't an insane amount of space back here. I don't know if that's in part due to the plastic piece on the back of the driver's seat here, but I've got plenty of knee room, plenty of foot room, in fact, so I wouldn't call it tight by any means. Just maybe isn't as cavernous as you might expect. Anyway, though, you can slide the seat forward and backwards, so it's all the way back right now, and then you can go forward if you want to give a little more room to the third row occupants. We'll get to the third row in a moment. Another thing you'll notice back here, nice big panoramic sunroof, and why don't we put the shade back? That'll brighten it up in here. These panoramic sunroofs are nice because they just make the cabins so much brighter. Other things, you've got a grab handle, there's a hook, there's a speaker from that great audio system, and then a light overhead. There are also shades for the windows if you've got little kids back here in a car seat, or if you just don't want to be blinded by the sunlight. And then what's really interesting is this middle third row piece here. So you can see this is a 40-20-40 bench seat, and there's no fold out armrest. There is a headrest, you can see, but what does happen is you've got cup holders and a storage piece here, and then this middle section actually comes out to make for pseudo captain's chairs. So you could take this out and you'd be left with room for 6, but the benefit is you have a pass through to the third row. So if you had, say, 3 or 4 kids and you were never going to be needing this middle seat here, you could just take it out, leave it in your garage pretty much permanently, and then the kids could more easily get into the third row. So to get this thing out, you pull this strap at the front of the seat, and that releases it from the rear. You can lift it, and there's a handle right here, a metal handle, and then you can pull it off of its pivot points, which are via these hooks that hook into these loops right here, and then you just lift it out, and there you go. And then with that piece out, you've got, you've still got these metal bits from the body here, but if you're 7 years old, I mean, this is a runway through which to jump into the third row. Speaking of the third row, let's check that out. Another way for getting back there is these buttons on the backs of the seats here, and then there we go. So you do have to pull the lever to get the seat up. You can't just yank on it, you have to pull that thing, but easy enough to do with the use of a second hand. And then got that, and we'll pull this seat back, and all right, so my knees are in the back of the second row seat here, but the nice thing is, say the person riding here is 10 years old and the person riding back here is 7 years old. Well, the 10-year-old doesn't need this much legroom, so they can move the seat up a little bit, and maybe the 7-year-old, who really wouldn't have needed any more legroom to begin with, but still, you can give the third row passenger a little bit more room if the second row person is willing to sacrifice a little bit. But once you're back here, not a whole lot else. There aren't USB ports or anything back here, just these kind of weird square, tiny shallow little cup holders. Seatbelt for the middle seat there. And yeah, not much else back here. You do get a light. That's about it. So not much going on in the MDX's third row. Probably best for kids. Adults can use it, though, in a pinch. Oh, on the back of the center console, you've got, again, 2 USB-A ports. That's kind of a bummer. And then a 12-volt outlet. I'm wondering if on the Advance trim, you'd get maybe an AC inverter here, but in this case, this is just a block-off plate. And then 1, 2, 3 zone climate control, so second row people can adjust temperature and fan speed and air direction and auto mode, and they can just turn it off. These parts don't feel really great. It's a weird angle that they're fixed at. Put this thing back in now. And for the record, really, really easy to get this back in. Overall, one of my favorite things about this vehicle is the powertrain. It's completely unremarkable on paper. It's just a naturally aspirated 3.5 liter V6. Gets decent enough fuel economy and puts out decent power. But once you get it out on the road, it all works really well together. So there's 50 miles per hour, not super fast or anything, but I don't know if you could get the experience over video there, but it sounds good. Power delivery is very linear. The 10-speed automatic transmission is really smooth. What I like is that at any point in the rev band, when it comes time to accelerate, the power is there. I just feel like the engine is always ready. It's always ready for you to accelerate. And for something that only makes 290 horsepower and only 267 pounds-feet of torque, I really think Honda has gotten the most that they possibly can out of this engine because, again, I'm really, really surprised to be raving about a 290 horsepower naturally aspirated V6. Aside from powertrain, everything here feels pretty good. Steering wheel is thick, stitching is nice. The shape is nice, like I said. The infotainment system, now that we're moving, I like it a little bit less because you have to keep your eyes on the road, but also to use this thing, you've got to look at a touchpad and look at a screen. So I'm trying to do 3 things at once here, the most important of which is not killing somebody on the road. And yeah, I wish I could just point and touch instead of having to basically use hand-eye coordination in a way that's a little bit unnatural, but still it does become more and more intuitive with use, and I do understand the logic there. I'm just going to argue that nothing beats a touchscreen. It's a drawback to the vehicle, but it's not a reason to not buy one of these. Another thing I don't think I mentioned earlier, there's a massive wireless charging pad on this center console here. Handling feels pretty good. I'm not looking for sports car handling out of a 290 horsepower family luxury SUV, but it's good enough. Honda is known for offering pretty good driving dynamics and everything from the Civic to the MDX here. Seat's pretty comfortable, bolstering is good. I've got a little space, but I'm a pretty narrow individual, so I think for the average person, this seat's gonna be very comfortable. All around, this thing is just really competent. They didn't really push the envelope when designing this thing. The design itself is sharp, but it isn't exactly a new take on the midsize family luxury SUV. It's rather a more refined and more modernized version of the MDXs that preceded it. And I mean, I can't really criticize Acura for not reinventing the wheel with this thing. I just think that if you liked the previous MDX, you're going to like this one. If you didn't like the previous MDX, I think there's still a chance that you'll like this one, but it isn't really a new formula. It's just a more modernized take on a previously winning formula. For the record, I really like the push button gear selector. It frees up a lot of space here on the center console. Backup camera is super sharp as well. Unfortunately, the A spec that we're in here does not have a 360-degree top-down camera system, but at least the rear view camera is really sharp, really high resolution. That's something that plagues a lot of new vehicles. They'll reuse camera technology from the previous generation, and you'll have this brand new design with all these sharp features, and then the backup camera will look like it's from about 2005. Not the case in the MDX here. They introduced a new backup camera with the 2019 RDX. That was the first of this new crop of Acura vehicles. And alongside Hyundai and Kia, this backup camera is probably one of the sharpest in the industry. All right, so there's your look at the new 2022 Acura MDX. As I said, this isn't really a new take on a midsize family 3-row luxury crossover SUV, rather just a more refined take on the previous MDX. This thing has now been around for 4 generations. In fact, my parents back in 2001 were probably one of the first people to buy the original MDX. And at the time, it was a totally new concept, a 3-row midsize luxury SUV. It offered tons of space. It was from an automaker that a lot of people trusted, and I remember it being very reasonably priced. And I think that that sensibility has carried on through each generation of the MDX. So this one, for example, nothing revolutionary here, but everything that it does pretty well. As far as the 3-row luxury crossover space goes, the MDX is a pretty safe bet, just like it has been for the past 20 years. Thanks for watching.